pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence. And while we do, we can be thinking of the family of Officer Chesna from Weymouth. I'd like to announce that the meeting is being recorded and televised by the local cable company. A motion to approve bill and payroll warrants.
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Now, as a public forum, is there anyone here who would like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda?
Sean Kane, 31 Forest Street. Two things. First, I'd like to know if the Buildings, Facilities, and Capital Expenditure Committee has made progress on the capital plan. A couple weeks ago, you referenced, Mr. Kowalski, you referenced the failure of the Finance Committee to meet this objective last year, but I think that was an unfair statement. FinCom simply does not have the authority to implement policy. That, as you know, is the role of the Board of Selectmen. And it was with this in mind that the capital meeting took the lead. The Capital Committee took the lead role on that initiative last spring after Mr. Anderson wrote the report that you referenced 2 weeks ago. Mr. Lynham is the chair of that committee. Last week you said we are currently at ground zero. I'm confused by that comment. The state has published a very specific report that defines a 7-step process to implement a 5-year capital plan. Mr. Lynham and the Capital Committee reviewed the report a couple months ago. I'd like to have some clarification on this issue, and specifically, I'd like to know the step-by-step process the BOS Board of Selectmen has taken to write a 5-year capital plan.
Okay, I'll have to turn that over to Frank.
Nothing has changed since we last met. The office is awaiting fixed asset reports to use to build the model. Mr. Kane, I understand you have a driving wish to see everything done in a time frame that you feel is appropriate. It doesn't work when you're working with that many people and that many pieces. We are preparing. I can't give you a time frame right now. I can't tell you we'll be done in 30 days. I can't tell you we'll be done in 60 days. The process begins. The participation occurs. We're going to be talking tonight about some other items that are going to impact our planning process. But right now, that's what I have.
Are you choosing to not follow the specific program that was recommended by the state?
We have not adopted a program by the state. You have.
Sure.
We haven't completed that process.
I guess what I'm saying is if the research is pretty specific about the timeline and the implementation of a plan, and you're choosing to go against that, are you currently doing research to implement this, or?
We are.
Okay, and do you have any references or something
No.
I can follow up with?
No, I don't have any references for you to call.
No, not to call, but just to refer to.
No.
Okay.
Item 2.
Item 2. It'd be helpful if you published a budget document. A couple weeks ago, when I asked about the size of the override, you said you didn't know, and then I was jumping the gun. Later that meeting, Mr. Lynham mentioned the increase in the school's budget compared to other departments. And then you suggested that we consider outsourcing the ambulance service. I'm very concerned about those things. People need to know the complexities of this budget. They need to know why. The state is pulling back on funding for our region, and they need to be assured that things are going to get better when we meet the target share.
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you right there. There's a item on the agenda called budget review. You're starting to talk about something that is on the agenda. And the people that are going to be talking about that agenda item will be the select people.
I'd like
and
3 more
those that- those
sentences,
that
so if
we-
I could just finish my thought, I would really appreciate it.
Well, I'd like to finish my thought.
Okay.
You've said that, I'd like you to repeat what you said about my recommending that we privatize the ambulance. Repeat what you said.
I said, and then you suggested later in the meeting that we consider outsourcing the ambulance service. My point is to reference...
Is that what you just read?
Yeah.
That's not what I heard you say. Because I did not.
Suggest
It was
that we consider...
very clear that I said I was against privatizing the ambulance.
My point is to reference the 3 in conjunction together. I asked about the override. Mr. Lynham talked about numbers pertaining to the school versus other departments, and then you considered outsourcing. At the start of the meeting, you said I was jumping the gun. So I would just like to finish my thoughts, and I'll make my point. People need to know why the state is pulling back on funding our region, and they need to be assured that things will get better when we meet the target share. They need to see these things with graphs and charts. The people deserve to know just how big the override is going to be. Transparency is essential during this process if people are going to have confidence in you. Lots of people were upset when you mentioned privatizing the ambulance service. That, to me, is not only jumping the gun, it's unethical. You, Mr. Kowalski, are losing my confidence. The creation of a budget document, the transparent process of a capital plan, giving people a positive vision of the future, these are the things that I'm waiting for, and the things I believe the community needs during this difficult time. Will you create a budget document and share it with the community?
Budget document will be prepared. We're going to go with whatever speed this committee and this town can go on, not according to your schedule, Sean, unfortunately. Just, things don't happen that quickly.
What I think would be helpful, though, is if you're going to talk about some really complex, difficult issues, more transparency, more information, more background would be helpful so people can understand. To simply make recommendations without giving them that follow-up is
There you go again, John.
unfair.
I made no recommendation.
You made a consideration.
I made no recommendation. I suggested, and Scott can correct me if I'm wrong, we have suggested, and partly it's through Scott's program, that we invite department heads in, and that we talk about the possibility of having either no increase next year or a small decrease in their budgets, and to talk about those things. As an example, I said, for example, the fire chief may have to consider giving us a report on the effect of privatizing, I didn't use the word privatizing, outsourcing the ambulance service for the fire department.
You can see my concern. I'm asking about...
No, I understand that there's a lot of concern. I don't understand the concern coming from the remarks that I clearly said.
When you don't give people transparency and you make recommendations about considerations and you make references to numbers, I'm speaking to Mr. Lynham.
Sean,
Mr. Lynham said that...
it's like talking to a wall, Sean. I wasn't making a recommendation to do anything. I was
made a
not.
recommendation to consider outsourcing the ambulance service.
We have to consider a lot of things. And there were other things in that meeting that I spoke of as examples to consider also.
So when you make a recommendation like that, and you don't give people the background and information to understand the budget, it becomes very frightening. You don't win over confidence. It's not a positive vision. It's really anxiety building.
Well, it certainly built some anxiety.
Yes.
And I'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak in public forum on something that's not on the agenda?
Yes. My name is Mary Fox, and I live at 565 Washington Street, right on the corner in apartment 5. I have watched on TV, because I've been reluctant to come, because it seemed every time I came to speak in public, it was that I was really an outsider. I think what this man is trying to say is there is going to be some kind of budget. We'd like to know, as taxpayers, what the amount of the override is that we're looking at. When is the vote going to take place? And are we, as a people, and there are all different attitudes about this in the town, In fact, now it's going against the schools. We got to match Hanson. We got to do this. I was just on the senior bus today. That was the senior outlook. Then we have other people interested in other things. I'm very concerned about what's going on. We need to know the override, the exact amount, or at least in the neighborhood, an approximate. We need to know when the budget's going to be so we can vote on it intelligently. And then the topper was when I heard, watching the last meeting on TV, and I watched it 3 times, trips, staff development, networking, whatever you want to call it. I, as a former school teacher in New York City, am opposed. My own background, I was qualified for the job. Didn't have to network, go for a promotion. I earned my job, and I did my job. And I was there every day, the whole day. Nobody paid for trips for me. Nobody paid for degrees or credits. I paid. The next thing is, what in God's name, and I don't mean to really put it down, but what are we learning? And the fire chief stood here and said, I won't go to Texas in August. I'm talking to the TV and going, well, are you going for the information of the climate? What's the deal? And then a couple of you said, no, go, and if you went to Colorado, excuse me, we're in Massachusetts. What if we got to do with Colorado? They're fighting huge forest fires out there. We're not even fighting that many fires in here. This has got to stop. We were facing a budget, an override. This is how it worked in my house. I was a single parent for a long time. Guess what? Mommy can't earn any more. Don't tax the people anymore. Enough is enough. The bottom line is you must cut back. 2 gentlemen here said, no out-of-state trips, moratorium. I agree, 100%. And I will bet every other person in this town, when I did tell them that went on, first of all, I said, how can we spare a fireman? How can we spare a police officer? How can we spare teachers? I thought they were in the classroom teaching. Well, come to find out, they're not. They need days to improve. You know what they did? They closed the library, kept the kids from going to my school in New York City, and said, Fox, what do you think about teacher development? I said, this teacher is as developed as she wants to be, okay? And I was. I had the credentials to match it. I did my job. You don't think I'm developed enough? You don't think I'm competent? Kick me to the curb. But do not take away education, services, and spend even more money. A flight? A room and board? Are you crazy? No, absolutely not. And people will line up behind me and say, oh my God, I didn't know that was even on the discussion. I didn't even know firemen went anywhere. Well, I come from a place where firemen are volunteers, so I'm always out of the mainstream here, not only with my New York accent and everything else, but the bottom line is what's right is right is right. That's how I was brought up. So you are qualified or you're not for the job. There needs to be no more improvement. And as far as networking goes, that's a glorified thing of saying, I'll shake your hand, I'll wash your hand back, or whatever. None of that crap. I had a principal say that to me once. I'll wash your back if you wash. I said, what? Are you out of your mind? I'm applying for a position in this school. I have nothing absolute. That is harassment. That is bull. That is absolute bull. You want a better job? Go and apply. Not on our time. And not on our dime. Okay? It's as simple as it gets. This gentleman has been up at every meeting, and he scoffed every time. Mocked, scoffed, put down. And it's like, Sean, you guys are sitting there and arrogant and saying, we're not giving you a timeline. Things don't work that fast. Well, you can spend our money fast enough. And I say, no. And believe me, I walk this town. I talk to a lot of different people. They are not going to go blindly and continue to go blindly into these polls and just vote whatever it is for an override. I say you freeze pay salaries if you have to. You don't get rid of people. I'm against that. But you take a pay freeze, period. You don't go out of state. You cut back where you can. As I told my daughter, there will be no expensive birthday presents. There will be no, well, she never got pedicures or manicures. We never did any of that stuff. I put the money where I knew it counted. Okay? She went to Catholic school. Yes, she did. And yes, I paid exactly what they asked me to. I didn't negotiate or anything else. Why? Because I believed in good education. Did she get horseback riding lessons? No, she did not, because I could not afford them. And that was the end of that. Jordache jeans, she worked for half of them, I got the other half up. They were $35. I thought it was outrageous. But the thing is, I know I'm old school, but I'm not that old, okay? My parents never got out of high school. They were not foolish. They were very smart people. They didn't get out of high school, not because they were slackers or because they were stupid. They didn't get out because they had family obligations and circumstances. They had very difficult lives. And they told me, get a good education. And while you're there, don't get a big vocabulary. Get a good education so you can stand up for women and children and speak up wherever you are, whatever the consequences. And that's exactly what I do, because there is no one here writing or signing my checks.
Thank you very much.
Remember it.
Part of your point is Sean's point, that you would like information faster than the town is able to give it to you. We're actually ahead of time as far as our usual sequence of events is concerned. Frank, do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, I'd like to comment a little bit.
Do you want to wait till we get?
I
to the
will be
budget
meeting
review
with
part? I think
the,
these answers are gonna.
They might. Good point, Scott. We have the budget review portion of
Good point, that's fine.
Yeah, we can do it then, and it might help some, but we're actually, it might not feel like we are ahead of time. The next item on the agenda is the chairman's report. I've written it down. I don't usually do that, but yes. No. I've written it down. Did you have your hand up? For what? Public forum?
Yes, please.
Something not on the agenda?
I don't think so. It should be very quick. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't, I thought there was only one other.
No, just quickly. Need a Salt 7 marble. Good evening, everyone. Mary, I like what you had to say, but there are many costs with the fire department that are state and federal requirements. It's not always just going to shake hands with their friends, hang at the beach, go sailing. It's frequently things that can be very important for the town and things that are required. Classes, they have to have upgrade their license all the time. There's a lot of other expenses other than just their salaries. So you have to keep that in mind. And Sean, you have a lot of ideas, but you frequently present them negatively. I understand and hear through the gossip that you want to run for Board of Selectmen. And I like that, and I like what you have to say, but maybe you can try to be a little more positive and listen to what they're saying so that when you come up, we can actually learn from you. Because I'd vote for a Board of Selectmen that I could learn from. Okay? And you got holes in your socks, buddy. Cut some needle and thread out. So I have a question. Last year we voted for an override for firefighters, right?
Yes.
And everyone's getting their increase in their taxes, so they're getting all wound up now, even though they already voted for it. My question about the thing, I'd like you to consider a few things when you come in this. Definitely the overtime. If we have enough people, why should there be any overtime? If we have enough staff now, shouldn't overtime costs be extremely small now?
Okay,
So can you ask that?
I'm sorry, Anita, but-
The other question is, I know that's on the left. The other question is, I just want to say I have had experiences with privatized ambulance services that almost killed my kids on 2 occasions. So when you come to look at that, can you include the chief in the decision-making as to the requirements of the company and their training of their staff?
Sure.
That's all.
You can be safe in the assumption that our ambulance service is not going to be privatized. When people get excited about a possible override, they have to have a reason to be excited about a possible override. They have to see what the cost is going to be if we don't come up with some other ways of dealing with our finances. There are things beyond our control, but there are some things that we can control. Randy has brought up on a few occasions the idea of looking at the way we finance the police station inside the levy limit.
Yes, right,
We have to
right.
think about how we might want to handle that, if we want to handle it differently, or if it makes sense to handle it differently. But as far as the ambulance is concerned, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
I'll hold you on your word.
Well, you have my word.
Thanks.
Watson, can I respond real quick?
No.
Two people brought up my name. You can't just respond.
People bring up my name all the time, and I don't always respond to it. No, we're going to go on with the meeting. It's my turn, Chairman's report. I wrote it down. I don't usually do that. I haven't done it for a long time. However, later on in this meeting, we're going to have an executive session to deal with a possible violation of the open meeting law that I may have committed a couple of weeks ago, or at least there's some people who think that I committed it. We're going to be talking about that in an executive session and coming up with a response to it. I just want to make sure that I express myself adequately now, so that's why I wrote it down. I don't want to get sloppy. The first item on my report is liaison assignments. On July 10th, after our last meeting, I handed out the fiscal year 2019 liaison assignments to board members. On July 11th, I received the following email from Randy LaMartina. Chairman Kowalski, could you please provide me with the documentation that gives the authority of delegation of liaison assignments to the person holding the chair position? If you cannot provide me with such documentation, I am requesting that a discussion on this matter be placed on our next meeting's agenda. Respectfully, Randy LaMartina, Selectman. That's why we're talking about it now. Randy and I have not discussed his reassignment. I learned his thoughts about his reassignment when someone forwarded to me his Facebook post that was put out on July 13th. In part, he wrote, quote, "Following our last meeting, I was notified I was no longer the liaison for the fire department. I question this decision, and I find it troubling in light of the chair's remarks about privatizing our ambulance service," end quote. Also, on that day, also on the 13th, Rich McKinnon of the Whitman Fire Department reacted on Facebook about the liaison reassignment, asking, quote, "What type of a liaison will Mr. Kowalski be when just this week he announced he wanted to look at the possibility, of privatizing Whitman's ambulance service?" Somehow a connection was drawn between the liaison assignment and our budget review. A few things need to be clarified, however, before we discuss the practice of chairs making liaison assignments. Number one, there's no connection whatsoever between a liaison reassignment of Randy LaMartina and the discussion of ambulance service. Number two, there's an inference that Randy and Rick seem to be making, that somehow the reassignment...
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I
Yes.
specifically requested you to provide me documentation whether or not you had the authority to provide these. If not, please place it on the agenda. Now, since I obviously, as in our packet, asked for this, I don't understand how it's falling under the chairman's report and not under new business.
Because I'm giving a report about liaison assignments. We'll get to you when you want.
Well,
But
you're kind of going into a little diatribe, and you see, this is why I almost didn't cut you off sooner, because now you're steering the conversation away from what I actually wanted to discuss about it. And I have an issue with that, but that is my point of order.
Okay, thank you. I hear your point of order, but I'm going to ignore it.
As usual.
In order to understand this whole liaison business, you have to have it in a context. And that's all I'm trying to do before we get to it, Randy, and we can talk about it. There seems to be an inference that Randy and Rich were making when they talked about the reassignment of Randy, and sort of an anti-union bias on my part. That was picked up by Sean Kane, by the way, on July 13th, when he wrote, quote, "Or maybe they'll start busting unions," as he suggested, meaning me. Never did I say anything about busting unions. Both of those inferences are totally incorrect. Why are they incorrect? Well, the idea that I recommended or supported outsourcing the ambulance service is a fiction. Anyone reading the Whitman Express or viewing the videotape of our meeting with anywhere close to an open mind can easily see that. Number two, the idea that I display an anti-union bias is equally absurd. I've been a member of the NEA since 1972, except for the years 1979 to 1983 when I was the Dean of Academic Affairs at Massasoit, and I could not belong. So for over 40 years, I've been a member of the union, been a supporter of the union. I'm, however, sorry that my remarks on 710 seem to have caused so much confusion, no matter what the motives are of those who were confused. Furthermore, if there was indeed an open meeting law violation on 710, which we'll be discussing in executive session, I will gladly apologize if I'm found to be in violation. I take the open meeting law seriously. It's simple. So why was Randy replaced as liaison? It's simple, but a little history is required here, and it's going to take a few minutes. Peg McGilvery was the fire department liaison for years, but when she passed away, I assigned myself as her substitute. I had the post for 2 years, fiscal year 12, fiscal year 13. When Lisa Green was elected, I gave her the position because I was undergoing cancer surgery and treatments at that time. Lisa stepped down in fiscal year 17, and Scott Lambiase took over the fire department at that time. I gave fire to Randy in fiscal year 18 because of his fire service experience and because I was looking forward to surgery in the fall. I intended at that time to take it back if I got strong enough. I did. Both got strong enough, and I took it back. Why? Why would I do that? Well, I enjoyed my time in fiscal year 12 and fiscal year 13. I really liked the fire department. My great-uncle, Bert Dyer of Dyer Avenue, was the Whitman fire chief in the 1920s. While I was at Massasoit Community College, I taught a number of firemen, including Chief Greno, Tom Ford, Pat Travers, John Norton, Lloyd Plass, and Skip Fletcher. I enjoyed them in class, and I'm proud of the work that they did outside of class as well. As you know, the opioid crisis is something that is important to me. It's important to my family. And I am particularly grateful for the way our fire service and police service people have stepped up to the plate in that regard, especially both chiefs, and Tom Ford from the fire department, and Dan Churchill from the police department. Now finally, to get to Mr. LaMartina's question. I apologize for the lengthy discussion, but I thought it needed to be placed in context. Well, Randy, there is no documentation that states that the chair has authority over liaison assignments. Answer to your question, there is none, nothing written down. It's been a long-standing practice from years before I was on the board. But like a lot of other things, we don't have written policies governing the way the Board of Selectmen itself carries itself. Just don't have it. With the board's permission, what I'd like to do is to assign Lisa Green to research other boards to find out if there's a practice out there that we can formally discuss as a board and adopt, change the way we do things. That being said, I probably should ask you, but I'm asking the rest of the board, if anyone has a problem with continuing the past practice until Lisa finishes her work, and we as a board decide a new direction if we think it's necessary. And now I'm sorry, but the floor is yours.
Well, I appreciate your sentiments, and I'd like to say that I bought into it, but I don't, unfortunately. Because it's not just the fire that you took, it's also Board of Health, which I formally have come to you with an issue you have overlooked. It's also Recreation, which we had an issue recently, and we're going to get to that obviously next. And I lose that night. So we're not talking about the fire. But you know what? I don't have an uncle that was in the fire service. I was in the fire service. I know what it's like to be up on top of the roof. I know what it's like to hold the line. I know what these guys go through on a daily basis. I also know the management side of it and the struggles that they go through. I would argue that there's anybody else on this board more qualified to be their liaison than me. Just like I would argue Mr. Salvucci, there's no one more qualified to be the liaison to South Shore Votech. In the times that we're in, I think we need to play to our strengths for success. And that's what we're doing. We have Mr. Lambiase with a form of a law enforcement background. He handles the police. And I was shocked that someone who actually is a member of the MTA for 30-plus years, who is a former chairman of the school committee, then gives me the school department. I don't think that's playing to our strengths, and I don't think that's giving us the best avenue for success. And if I knew you were just going to take it back in 18, I wouldn't have spent hours in negotiations with the fire department. I wouldn't have researched several years of contracts with trying to look into the chief's upcoming contract. I successfully negotiated an extension this year with the chief. I mean, to me, nostalgia's great, but you know what? There's some people up here that aren't satisfied with how slow we're moving. You know what? I think we need to, the last thing we should be doing is upsetting the balance that we have right now in relationships and how people have learned to work with each of their departments. Just about every recreation outing has gone on. I've been there. Okay? I haven't seen many others. I've been there. Okay? Memorial Sunday, I didn't see you there. When the chief got sworn into the IACP, I did not see you there. If it mattered that much, where were you? For me, it's punitive, and I'm sorry about that.
Okay, I'll take what you say into consideration. Where was I that weekend of the memorial thing? I believe I was with my family. I can't remember what it was, but there was a reason why. The reason why I couldn't be there. The reason why I couldn't be there. I've been there before, but I wasn't there this time. You're right. Anyone else have anything they want to say on this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we continue this liaison past practice until such time as we have other information that would make us change the way we do business.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to see, rather than until such time, I'd rather see this dealt with, not like some of our other policies that we've taken quite a bit of time for, but this is something that I think we need to deal with in short order.
ASAP.
Very short order.
Agreed?
Like next meeting, it'd be nice to have it can't be that difficult to call a few towns and see what the other issues are, and I'll find out from the one I work in.
Okay, fine. Next meeting.
I think it's only fair that
And we can put it on
get
the
on it.
agenda for the next meeting.
And Kyle,
Meanwhile, Randy, if you want to sit down and have a talk, we can talk about the assignments and look at them again. I mean, I had a reason for putting you on this with the schools, and it was that you've been interested in them, you've been disappointed in them, and I thought that it would be.
I've been interested in every aspect.
I thought it
of
would be a good
this
assignment.
government. Okay, it's the success of these people that I'm interested in.
the only thing, Kyle, I have to say is on liaisons, as long as the committee that you are placing us in, that there is no conflict of interest. Because years ago, when I was chairman, I did not go with the fire department because of the fact that my son was on the fire department. And that was a conflict of interest. And now he's still a firefighter, but not in Whitman, and it's not a conflict of interest, but I kind of stand a little away from that for people to say, well, his son's a firefighter, right? So I kind of back away a little bit. So I think as long as there's no conflict of interest on any of the appointments that is given, it shouldn't be a problem. Now, and as long as they're given out equally, not, one having 2 or 3 and
Right.
others having 7 or 8,
Right, but
understanding that,
that's the way it is.
somebody has to work here. Sorry, Scott. But, and the rest of us are somewhat retired or on disability, so we do have the time. So, that being said, that's all I have to say.
Okay, so the motion has been adjusted to having a report at the next meeting.
Amend that so that we make sure that we do this as
As soon as possible.
Next meeting.
So the next meeting is, do you think you're capable of getting that information in a matter of time?
Is there any more discussion?
I would like to add that this is my 15th year on this board, and I would say almost every year the liaisons changed. A couple of years, you'd have it for 2 years, whatever, but they always changed. And I was always under the assumption that it changed for a reason. So being a member of the Board of Selectmen, you would be able to have a broader sense of how this town operates. Because you'd have it a year or two of this, a year or two of that, and you would then be well-versed in how everything goes. And that was just my assumption based on everything in the beginning when I first got here. That's how things operated. Now, beyond that, I would have my motion amended to...
Brian, if I may, I appreciate that statement, and if this was a universal shakeup, I wouldn't have a problem, but it's not. We have members here that were not changed.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the list now, and I wish I had kept my list from previous years. So
Well, I have them both, if you want to look. You and Scott were not changed. I had 3 removed from me, and I took 1 of Dan's. And those are the only changes. And
Would you take any votes?
the school,
Ah,
the school.
all right, because I just don't have the time.
Yeah, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, you had expressed an interest in the accountant, Randy, and I believe I switched you and Dan on that, correct? I also believe that Brian was changed. He is taking on the Council on Aging. And Scott might have escaped,
While he's working.
but there were some changes.
You didn't take anything away from me. It's my
I
own
have both
problem.
lists, and I can show them.
Okay, any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, next item on the agenda, if I can find my agenda. Next item on the agenda, a letter received from Allison Sullivan regarding Independence Day celebration. The board received a letter yesterday, that's why it wasn't on the agenda earlier on, from Allison Sullivan, who was not in attendance at our 7/10/2018 meeting discussion of the July 4th events. Since it's clear that she was mentioned, I believe it's only fair to read her thoughts as she presents her side of the issues involved. I won't be asking for any comments from the Board of Selectmen. It's not a place to do that. And it should be clear that these are her views only and not ours that are being presented. So I'd like to read her letter to you. Spoke to her this evening.
If I may, the point
Can I-
that the person that she's talking about is not present, and I would need to clarify, does he have the right to be present for this?
Okay, we've talked about that. Of course, she wasn't present when his presentation was being made. She has stated that this is not a complaint. She's not filing this letter as a complaint against a public official. It's merely an attempt to set the record straight from what she observed and what she saw. That's all. She wasn't here that night. A lot of things were said about her. Anybody could tell they were talking about her. I think it's only fair that we are allowed to hear what she has to say. My name is Allison Sullivan. I attended and participated in the Whitman's Independence Day celebration on Wednesday, July 4th, 2018. Let me begin by saying I had a great time at the event. In fact, everyone that was with me enjoyed themselves. We were not alone. Everyone there was enjoying themselves. Based on my experience and my interaction with many residents of Whitman, young and old, I must say I was surprised when I heard that my attendance and participation was being criticized. After watching a video of your meeting of July 10th, 2018, I was shocked,
shocked at the numerous false statements made to the board by someone. To be clear, what you and your fellow board members heard was simply not true. To begin with, a member of my committee was clearly told by the department head, no political signs, no political t-shirts, no political buttons, no handing out campaign literature, no balloons with my name on them, and no politicking. He did say we could set up a table and give out watermelon with a couple of family members. These clearly communicated prohibitions by the department head prompted a polite call to the town administrator to determine what was and what was not allowed. The town administrator expressed his disagreement with the restrictions being imposed by the department head and said he would get back to our campaign, the department head. He did, and he confirmed that we could participate without restrictions communicated to my campaign by the department head. During your meeting, the department head at one point acknowledged that he did communicate all these prohibitions, and later, as the story evolved, he tried to claim he didn't impose all these restrictions. At one point claiming he only said we could not wear red shirts. As you so aptly asked the department head, if you didn't communicate these restrictions, why would someone call to ask? Sadly, these are not the only false statements made by the department head. What follows are several examples of the false statements the department made to the board. The department head falsely stated we showed up with and put up banners, plural, the size of station wagons. The statement is simply not true. We had one folding table with a tablecloth. The tablecloth has my name and the position I'm seeking on the front of it. The table with the tablecloth on it was not even the size of a compact car, let alone a station wagon. The department head falsely implied we initially encroached on the family picnic tables and were instructed to move. This implication is simply not true. When we arrived, we put our table at what might be the furthest point from the events. Other candidates were allowed to set up their tables next to the picnic tables. When the department head saw the tablecloth with my name displayed, he instructed us to turn the table so it faced away from the park and towards the street. We initially complied until the other candidates put signs out facing the park and the events. We then turned our table back so the tablecloth with my name on it was facing the park. Department head falsely stated we had 20 signs planted in the ground. This statement is simply not true. Like other candidates, we had 4 to 5 signs at or near our table. The department head falsely described the group with me as an unruly entourage, with almost all the residents stiff-armed. This statement is simply not true and preposterous. I was joined by my mother, my younger brother, my brother-in-law, a paramedic, my sister, a veteran of the U.S. Armed Services, my aunt, a cousin, a friend, a member of the Board of Health from Abington, 2 high school students, my 3-year-old nephew, and my 1-year-old niece. Hardly an unruly entourage, and not one of them was stiff-armed by any of the wonderful people attending and participating at the event. In fact, people were engaged, respectful, polite, having fun, asked for and were provided balloons, American flags, campaign literature, and bumper stickers. The department head falsely stated that we attempted to use the offense microphone and weren't unsuccessful, Mr. Westhaver's microphone. This statement is simply not true. We had no interest and had never asked anyone for use of a microphone. There was no megaphone, no bullhorn, and we didn't have a rally. We had a couple of people filling up balloons, 2 high school students walking around the event, handing out balloons and American flags. Several family members participated in several events, and we had campaign literature and bumper stickers available at our table. I walked to the event and introduced myself. As mentioned, the responses were very positive from young to old. There was no rally. There was no disruption of the day or any of the events. It was obvious when I arrived and during the day that the department head was offended and angry with my participation. While I don't agree with it, I understand it. What I don't understand and find most troubling is the department head making knowingly false and malicious statements to you and your board about me and my participation at the event, knowing it could affect my reputation and decisions you and your board may be called upon to make. In the spirit of our Independence Day, let me close by quoting one of our founding fathers. Quote, "Facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passion, they cannot alter the state of facts or evidence." John Adams. As you deliberate and consider what steps, if any, the board should take, consider the facts and not the false statements you were told at your July 10th, 2018 meeting. And when you do, I hope you lean hard towards allowing ordinary citizens the fullest opportunity to exercise their First Amendment rights. I look forward to many more visits to Whitman and spending time with the wonderful people that call Whitman home. Sincerely, Allison M. Sullivan. Next item on the agenda is the town administrator's report. Frank?
Okay. I am pleased to announce that on Friday, I attended a gathering in Winthrop where we were notified that we have received a $250,000 grant for green communities. That grant provides us with funds, and I'll break it down, $156,974 toward the LED conversion for street lights, $15,427 for the middle school kitchen ovens, and $77,599 for lighting replacements at the Conley Elementary School. $250 was the maximum grant. We were very happy to accept it. My granddaughter attended with me and walked up and accepted the grant from the Lieutenant Governor. She was a little upset when we got home, and I told her I needed it back because it was town money. She thought it was hers.
We should probably acknowledge Lisa's role in
Absolutely. Lisa did all of the yeoman's work associated with putting all of this, and it was a staggering amount of information that had to be put together to justify the grant. And this is our third green energy grant, and she's done a great job with it. Thank you, Lisa.
Well done.
I hesitate to call it a subcommittee, the group reviewing the accountant position has met and agreed that we will be seeking a new full-time accountant, or full-time as defined by the town hall contracts. And I should have ads ready to go by tomorrow, which will be run by Randy and Brian. Target date is to have an accountant on board, hopefully end of August, middle of September. And finally, the community assessment. Melinda Tarsi has suggested some dates, and let me just grab them here. Should have written them down rather than relying on the email. And they're Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. And let me grab it right now.
And these are dates for what, Frank?
For the stakeholders, the first meeting to identify what our direction
Okay.
should be in doing a community assessment. Apologize, I must have left the letter down on my desk. Let me just pull it up.
What week, what month?
In July, they're all in
It's in
July.
It's a Monday, Tuesday, or a Wednesday in July?
Monday, Tuesday, and Friday.
Monday, Tuesday, Friday?
Yes.
Okay. We had a meeting, you, Scott, and I, and we talked about who would be invited to the stakeholders meeting. And those are the people that would need to get in touch with whenever you have some parameters.
Correct.
And they involved the selectmen,
Correct.
business leaders. We had
Yes.
some suggestions for business leaders. Boards, committees, citizens at large, department heads, large group. In fact, at one point, she suggested to you that if we don't have space here, we could use a place at Bridgewater State.
That's correct.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about this, Scott? In a report on our meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I think the meeting was great. I think, what we've come up with, it'd probably be best to do it here at Town Hall. I think we have plenty of room.
Yeah.
But obviously, the stakeholders, a lot being this board, our school committee, our finance committee, other boards, land use boards should be involved in this. And it should, the business community and then go out to the general public. A lot of times when you get into a situation like this, you want to break it down into some working groups, get some feedback, but this is going to give us sort of a good baseline of where we want to go with this, assessment to try and find out what exactly is it that is important to the people of this town. So it's a long process, but this is a great place to kick it off. And I think, step one is us getting word out to everybody and getting buy-in and participation from as many of these stakeholders as possible. The more participation we get, the greater the success will be.
And the goal for the stakeholders is merely to give Dr. Tarsi enough information about this town and what's important so that she can construct a questionnaire that we would be putting together in the fall.
This meeting would be day or evening at the preference of the group. The dates offered are July 27th, July 30th, July 31st, and August 6th through 9.
Okay, could you do that again?
Sure. July 27th, July 30th, July 31st, and August 6th, 7, 8, and 9.
Okay. Okay, that's
In the interest of...
it's a lot of gathering together.
In the interest of time, I would think we'd be better off looking at the first week in August.
What time?
Did you have a conflict?
That's what we have to determine. Because we have a lot of people that we want to reach out to get involved in this.
What is the 8th and 9th? You want to try the 31st?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
A lot of people to get together.
I can work out something in there. Okay, that's your job, Frank, for the next short period of time, is to get a whole bunch of people together on one of those days.
Okay?
I would say that Tuesday is probably not a bad night, the 7th, if you think you can swing it.
I'll do my best.
Yeah, let's look at Tuesday, the 7th and 8th.
Okay.
In the evening?
Yeah.
In the evening, as a starting point. What happens after that? Once she gets some information and she starts working on the questionnaire, then we'll develop, the questionnaire will be developed. The results will be analyzed by her and her group, shared with us. And then what we will have is the beginning of, that's the first step in a 5-year plan. And the first step is for us to understand as specifically as we can what kind of a town the people that live here and the people that work here want to exist in. The very first step. And once that's done, once that statement of values is created, it's from that statement of values that each one of the stakeholder groups, each one of the contributors, is able to fashion in some way goals and objectives that meet that statement of values over a period of time. And it is a process that takes a little while. I had some experience with it when I worked at college. I was in charge of planning for a long time. It was easy, and as I mentioned in a meeting here before, it was easier there because you have groups of people that are there all the time. And this is a little more daunting. It's going to take a little while, but a good 5-year plan is meaningless unless you have a group of people who get together first and establish some kind of desires, wishes, parameters. So we're going to try to do that. It's been done in other towns. We ought to be able to handle it. Anything else, Frank, on the town administrator's report?
That's it for now.
Okay, Scott, I asked you if you wanted to handle a budget review.
Yeah, okay, so I think
We had another meeting.
We
Frank,
did,
about this.
we did. We do often meet during the week and actually try to get stuff done. So this may answer some of the questions out there. Sean, hopefully they'll answer some of your questions. So we want to put a small working group together. It'll heavily be, obviously, the Finance Committee's involvement and the Selectmen's involvement. But the idea is to get a set of comprehensive policies, guidelines, procedures for how we're going to deal with going into this budget cycle and future budget cycles. And the things we're specifically looking at is, in this particular context, is what is the information we need? How fast can we get the information? And what can we do with this information? And are we duplicating efforts? We want to make sure that we're working with the Finance Committee, that they know whatever their role is we're doing whatever we can to help them. But we want to be in front of it going forward, as opposed to trying to react to something later in the year. So this working group, and we're going to reach out to them. I think we threw some names around, but for the most part, we'll kick it off with a meeting, hopefully a joint meeting with FinCom. And I think what we're looking at is probably 2 members of FinCom, 2 members of this group. We want members from department heads, and we also want members from the school committee. I think it's important that we have a lot of involvement with the school on this. But hopefully what we come up with this is a procedure that, when we're going to get the information, how we're going to get the information. We want to make the information readily available. We don't want anybody to be surprised. We do want our transparency. And, looking at things, are we following best practices? So I think you'll see, and we're again, we're not looking to drag our feet on this. Passionate about getting this done and getting it out. We would like to see budgets coming out of department heads in September. And we are looking, when we ask for budgets, we are asking for level-funded budgets, and we're asking for budgets showing cuts, and we have to ask for that now. We have to ask them how these cuts are going to affect the department. We're not saying that we're going to put these cuts into effect, but we need to know, and we need to know sooner than later, that if we are going to, what are the effects going to be if we do go this route? I would hope that once we do get our budget and we do get some numbers, that we're going to have a much rosier picture, but I'm not optimistic. So I think what my hopes would be is the first meeting that we're available in August, that we can get the Finance Committee to meet with us. Again, have a joint meeting so we can all work on this together. This has to be joint between the 2 committees. We'll pick, in the meantime, we're going to reach out to the names of the people that we want on this working group, make sure that they're on board with it, and then I think we're going to go forward from there.
Anyone have any response to the question?
Yeah, you're going to ask members of the schools to be on this committee?
Yep.
How many selectmen?
2.
Okay. If I'm not volunteering, I don't know who you're going to choose, but if I'm not a member, then I'd like to be able to see if I can get Tom Hickey, our superintendent, to be on this committee, where he does the budget process for South Shore Hotel.
Good point.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I don't want you to pick 2 selectmen and all of a sudden I'm the representative because I'm school committee, and that makes a quorum. That's wrong. So,
Okay.
I think Tom Hickey would be the person that should be on this. So he has a lot of knowledge on budgets, but he also has great knowledge on budgets, bottom line budgets, where you start from 0 and build up. And not just say, okay, this was here last year, I'll start there and go up.
Okay,
So he's very good at that.
we can reach out to him.
Absolutely.
Anyone else have any
I
comments?
would just like to see if we could get the shortfall actually recognized prior to all this, and I think that could be done as easy as you possibly doing an Article 2
Sure.
level funded with contractual obligations, and actually see where we are right off the bat.
One of the things I would really like people to understand, we're talking about all of this number crunching and having things out there. We still haven't closed the current year. I'm meeting with the accountant next week to review the appropriation report and determine what has to be carried over and what's going to be closed to revenue. We're talking about a fiscal 2020 budget, which starts 11 and a half months from today. I don't think I'm dragging my feet by trying to close the one year before I get to the next one. It's almost impossible to
I
do
don't-
both of those and everything else together.
Hope I didn't give the impression, I didn't think that we were dragging our feet. What I'm
No,
saying
but some
is
people do, and I wanted to make it
Yeah, I
clear.
just want to make sure we're out ahead of it this year
Right.
and going forward, but yeah, I do understand.
You know, I've already done a
Process.
revenue estimate as reasonably as I can, given the fact that we won't have our growth numbers until September or October, and we're basing everything on this year's budget, which, by the way, still isn't set by the state. We do have preliminary numbers, and they look okay. We didn't lose anything in the process. As far as the schools go, you know, it's the elephant in the room when it comes to the budget. And I don't know that I can get an answer out of them today on what's projected for next year. I did reach out. Christine was away. I haven't had a chance to follow back with her, but I have a projection. I did the projection a month ago. And if we use norms, if we assume what we saw last year, you know, we're upside down by $1 million. I don't know what new growth is coming in, and that's really a difficult thing to identify because we have a June 30th closing year for growth, but they go back to January 1st. It doesn't make any sense to me. Thought we moved to June 30th to get all that growth in. But we'll have draft numbers. I'll circulate them, and I'll set up a page on the website to post as we go along. So far as information to the public, we publish an annual report every year, which gives everyone detailed information on every department and on all the budgets. We publish a warrant in Article 2 every year, which is available to everyone. We don't mail it, but it's published on the website, and it provides information as to what we're spending and how we're spending it. And the only thing we don't publish, and we will start doing that, is the individual revenue estimates. And the reason I'm hesitant on that is some of them, at best, they're a guess.
Anything else?
I would invite any comment from the Finance Committee members that are here if they have anything they'd like to add.
Okay.
I think I would like to add, there is that information available. We were concerned about the project, as Frank said, that is available.
Yeah, and
So there was maybe one thing that we're going to show you on how things were spent. So if you have any concerns, I think it's downstairs if you're looking at access.
I'm concerned, I only have three things. How much is the override?
on your calendar.
Why did you do that?
So I want to hear from Dave, not Mary, not the woman who engaged Mary.
Okay,
have
excuse me.
conversation-
I think I'd like to have the floor back, please.
Just
You
a
guys
quick
can carry on.
comment.
Outside.
One of the questions was, what is the override and when is it? I can't tell you what it is till we have all the numbers, but I can tell you when it is, next May.
Okay, Dave.
So we're not going to know anything though until what, October or November?
At least.
Okay. Yes.
Dave
Dave.
Cordero, 19 Houghton Rest Drive, Vice Chair
Right.
of the Finance Committee. We haven't collectively made any comments in regards to the subcommittee, and that's that's what you're asking?
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything, or if you have any issues with it, or...
Yep, collectively, we haven't came to a decision, but overall, I think I can speak in the sense that we are in support of it. I think individual committee members have expressed interest, so we have, we're in full support in providing any support that you need.
And so, and you think a joint meeting would probably be in order to kick it off?
Absolutely, yeah, we're prepared for a joint meeting,
the
next
last
Board of Selectmen meeting.
In August?
In August, yeah. It'll
Yep.
be in, like, the last week of August.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Dave. Okay.
That's it on the budget.
Okay, that's it on the budget. Frank's already dealt with the community assessment, although he has some things to deal with. Liaison reports, any liaisons want to make reports. But before you do that, I've become sensitized over the last 24 hours to the need to be really specific on our agendas. So we have a category that we put on liaison reports. In the future, if you believe you're going to have a liaison report, let Laurie know before the agendas go out, so there can be some bullets underneath it. Go ahead.
That being said, okay, I have 2 liaison reports. I am an MPO, I am a signatory for MPO Metropolitan Planning Organization, does all the road construction in Old Colonies District, which goes from Plymouth all the way to Brockton, Eastern Big District. Just to let you know that there is a project, Route 18 and 27 and 18 and 14, that's 100% design. It's out, they call it out for advertisement, we call it what, out for bid. I suspect shovel in the ground will be this fall. So be prepared, because I think 18 and 27, they'll be putting in a new water pipe, sewer pipe there too also.
Couple of 100 feet.
Yeah, a couple 100 feet. So they're going to be tearing up those 2 intersections, and be prepared for the aggravation, I guess I'm going to put it. But it's something that we need to get done to widen Route 18 and to help the traffic that is being handled on the Route 18, that it's just increased so much. And second, I am liaison to South Shore VOTEC. I am on the school committee. And at our last meeting, we did finalize our year and did our year-end transfers. And there was a motion that I motioned, and it was passed, that there is $742,319.65 from non-tuition residents that go to South Shore VOTEC. It was a motion to take that according to the formula to offset the cost of the 2018-29 assessments to the district towns. So I don't know exactly how much the offset will be to Whitman, but at least it's money saved. So that when we have extra money from non-region tuition, it goes back to the towns to offset the cost of the town. So that's a significant amount. There's other motions that will help, that we're putting extra money towards the building as far as the upkeep and construction of certain areas, that we're doing it this way instead of assessing the town. So it just saves all 8 member towns the money they haven't done. So that's a report. It goes to items.
Nice.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is...
Oh, wait, I do have a liaison.
Oh, you do?
Yep.
Be my guest.
From the police chief, just to let everybody know that on Tuesday, August 7th, is the National Night Out. It's something they did last year. I know it was over on Memorial Field. They had the state police air wing there, Plymouth County Sheriffs. They had a bunch of vendors, jumpy houses. They had hot dogs, hamburgers, and face painting. The Touch a Truck program. The fire department chipped in and volunteered. They were there. So it was a really great night. So anybody who's interested, it's 4 to 8 p.m. Tuesday, August 7th, and free family fun.
So would that mean we want to stay away from that date?
It's 4 to 8.
Should we maybe be looking at Monday?
The night before? Yeah. We could lose a few people that night. So maybe the Monday.
Oh, is there a cost to that?
It is the free family fund.
Triple F.
How much is this free, would you
I
say?
want to get that out there, so.
It is free. Yep, I do.
And I just have one quick thing, I guess I'll throw it under accounting. Yeah, it has to do with money, so we'll throw it under accounting. Obviously, we've had a little, some tensions here this evening, but we can't forget how great our community is. And I read a story recently in the wake of Sergeant Chestnut's passing that there was a little boy, 7 years old, from the town of our town, Brady Proto, I believe his name is, ran a lemonade stand and raised almost $1,000 for the family on his own at 7 years old. And, you know, it's things like that that, you know, that is what Whitman's about, so we can't forget that.
That was appropriate for an accounting report.
And he was the lemonade liaison.
How many cups, Randy?
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to look at travel and expense policy again.
$1,000. Our last discussion, we were hung up on what type of limits
Right.
we wanted to set and whether we just wanted to leave the departments to exercise judgment. I feel very strongly that we need to, going forward, deal with training and travel expense in an appropriation way so that we set budgets for each department based on anticipated need, so that there isn't this huge discretionary issue facing us. I do think that there is a time when out-of-state travel is appropriate because of what is available, but I think, you may not agree with me, but I think that should be something that should be treated with at the board level, because it does involve typically greater expenditures. And as far as the allocations go for the costs, I do think that the GSA guidelines fall into place in most cases. If there's an exception, then that should be checked before a commitment is made to travel. We don't do that much travel.
Do you have a point?
No, I think simpler is better, but what I would like to do is see us get through this evening and vote a policy one way or the other, whether it's one that Frank likes, one that you like, one that I like, I don't.
Okay, but we have
In the
to.
middle.
We have a policy that's been in our package a couple of times. The concern, I think, that you and I both shared about it was a policy that didn't necessarily involve the board's prior approval.
Yeah, I have no interest in prior approval. I do agree that I think going forward that the budgets, individual budgets, when they come to us to put their budgets together, should be a line item in there and something that we can see that is earmarked for travel and education. And then going forward, assuming that they're acting responsibly, they'll have guidelines that they'll have to work within. If they go outside that guidelines, I think our accountant will be able to pick that out and say that we're not reimbursing you for that, we'll kick it back, which time they can come to us and try and explain themselves. But, you know, the way this is written, it's a lot of, it's extra work for me that I'm not interested in as a board member. It's extra work for Frank that I think is unnecessary, because I think a good policy sorts of puts it in place and lets them know what they can and can't do, and then we can expect them, as department heads that we're paying very well, very well-educated department heads, that they can handle it. If they don't handle themselves appropriately, we'll deal with it.
Because the accountant will flag it. Is there something that needs to be done to these pages that would reflect what you just said?
Strike anything that says
All requests for
prior
out-of-state
approval. Yeah. And I really don't have a problem with the guidelines he's giving examples of Holiday Inns, Ramadas, Choice Hotels, et cetera. It's not saying you have to stay at a Holiday Inn or Ramada. He's given, the GSA per diem rate, as he said. If they can't fall within that, then they can pay more, or they can come to us afterwards, or they can come to us before. If they want to come to us and say, look, I want to spend more, they can certainly come to us, but if they live within what we give them, there should be no reason for the prior approval. So that's my only thing, but as, I'm not,
Okay.
I'm one member here.
All right, one of the things, so what we're saying, is we give them guidelines, anything over and above that is on their dime. Unless they come before us and we approve it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. If they're going to a conference, we're sending the department head to a conference, and we're, obviously paying for the department head to go to that conference.
Like if they want first class and we say no.
They can pay for that.
Right, okay.
Exactly.
Anything other than regular coach travel should be at their own expense.
One of the letters that we received from one of the department heads that asked a question about if you go to a conference and the room is at the conference center and it's above the rate that we're saying they should pay, that falls into what happens to me when I go down to Hyannis for the school committee, because I am the liaison down there that votes on resolutions for the school system. Those are things that we send to the state that we're looking for. So I am voted to go down and do that. If I was to stay at the conference center, it's $170 a night. Right now, I'm talking about Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Right? I do not stay at the conference center for $170. I will go 2 miles away and only pay $90 at the Comfort Inn or something. That's just the way I am. And they expect that from me, to hold down the budget, to work within the budget. And I think looking at if there is a conference in a certain area and the conference center is X amount of dollars, but yet 2 miles away, there, especially if you drive to it, like I do down the Cape, 2 miles away, there is another hotel that you could stay. You got to get up a little earlier, you got to go to the conference, but it's still, you're working within your budget.
Well, I think that's an example Scott just made, that if it doesn't fit within the guidelines,
You find other reasons, or you pay for it.
you request it be reviewed. If you're at a 3-day conference, it's difficult to have all the events planned at one location and stay at somewhere else.
Not for me.
And that's why most of the conference-type gatherings fall within the guidelines of the GSA, because they know it's out there.
Okay.
But I think if there's an exception, it should be up to the manager to say, hey, look, this doesn't fit the plan.
Yeah.
Will you support additional funding?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd just like to remind you, a few minutes ago, we were talking about a potential $1 million override. Now, and we've also been accused of having a laissez-faire approach to governance. So I think you can't have it both ways. You need to realize we're in a budget crunch, and you have to do everything you can to come up with solutions to keep the costs down for the citizens and taxpayers of this community. You can't say that we're, oh, woe is me, and then, oh, well, let everybody go and do whatever they want, and if it gets bounced, then we'll talk about it. To me, that's absolutely wrong, and we shouldn't be doing that. We should have the guidelines in place at a minimum, and we should be following those guidelines, and I would even suggest an out-of-state moratorium, because you can't say we either have to raise taxes or cut services, and then in the next sentence say, well, travel as you may. I'm just opposed to it. I just can't believe that we're even having this discussion.
Anyone else? Brian's made a suggestion. He's made a suggestion that because of a forecast that unfortunately is not set in concrete, a forecast that we're just finishing one year and we're about to go into another one, he's suggesting that it appears as if the situation is going to be dire enough for us to have a at least a one-year moratorium on out-of-state travel. Is that the way I understand you to say?
I would make that suggestion.
Do you want to make it in the form of a motion?
I would make a motion that we have a one-year moratorium on out-of-state travel, and that we adopt these guidelines, they're common guidelines, and anything above and beyond has to come before the board for approval.
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay, discuss.
Okay, I agree with that, but when we put this together and we find out that we are not in such dire shape as we thought, then could we lift the moratorium on out-of-state travel?
I would say that would be up to this board.
We do already have one department head that's put money down on out-of-state travel.
Well, if we do have a guy that's put out, it's a guy, right?
Apparently.
It's already put in, I would say he was exempt from any change that we vote right now.
Before the,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But not for the guidelines.
Well, it's,
I mean,
You know what, he's already booked a
I mean,
trip.
you can't split hairs like that. It's either before the vote or after the vote.
Yeah.
So I think that he did that under the premise that it was before any of a potential vote we have here. So you could not really
so haste not haste.
penalize him for something he was
No.
going under the
Past
current
practices and
situation.
things that we've allowed going in the past. And it's, shame on us for not having done this
Right.
A month ago.
a year ago.
We should have had this many years
Yeah.
ago. This kind of policy, we should be having more of these kind of policies, which would get rid of gray area in any of these kind of financial decisions, and we'd be having a better handle on what happens.
Then the good part is we are working on it now. And
Right.
Well, then I would ask that department head to, even though he's already put it, if there's any way he can rearrange things, do it now. He hasn't left yet, has he?
he might have.
Who knows? Okay.
Booking
no,
is-
I don't think that's right.
I think what we have to do is, and we can go with,
This point going forward.
yes,
Okay.
it's fair.
If this motion passes, you can't penalize him for something he did before the motion passed. If it fails, then it's just business as usual.
So are we adopting the hotel rate?
Yeah, on this travel and expense reimbursement policy, it has underlined things that are new. When were those new things put in?
Those are old new things.
Those are old new things. So this is a policy that we've had for a while and we just haven't okayed it?
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Those were not new 5 meetings ago.
This is what?
Those were new 5 meetings ago. Old new.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, I think we have some language in there, if they're at the conference and they're at the conference rate,
Right.
I would think that would be perfectly acceptable. But there's always the ability, this doesn't take away the ability of any department head to come to us prior to ask for any other consideration.
It just doesn't demand that the person come before us.
No, if they want to come to us and say, listen, I tried to book it, all the government rates are booked, I do want to go to this conference, it's going to cost an extra whatever, what say you? We can deal with it. But if they fall within these guidelines, there's no need for them to come to us.
But it doesn't also stop him from being, so that he'll say, well.
so there's two
I can go
aspects to this
someplace-
motion.
I can go someplace else that's cheaper.
Well,
It's two aspects to the motion. One is that there'd be a moratorium on out-of-state travel with the exception of the person that's already started his application, and that these guidelines would be adopted
without the requirement
With all the requirement.
to seek prior approval from the town administrator or the board.
Which one?
Is that clear?
Right.
Does anyone have anything else to say?
Just to be clear on the car rental, we'd be striking pre-approved, right?
All the
Okay.
pre-approved things, yeah.
One thing I would like to add to this is, there is a part of this equation that Frank had brought up at our last meeting about required events that you have to go to keep your education or your verification or whatever it may be.
Certifications, yeah.
Certifications that, and we do get some credit for for that in insurance and other things. Is that correct, Frank?
That is correct.
We do get some
We get,
some benefits
Percentages off our bill.
to these, so we have to be mindful of that. You don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face, but I just believe in these times until we get
The
a...
training credits this year were $16,000.
Yeah, so, I mean, we have to be mindful until we get a better...
Yeah, but if you're talking about Maya, that wasn't out-of-state travel.
No, it's just,
The only prohibition here that is talking about is out-of-state travel.
correct.
Okay, any further thoughts? Okay, to review what the motion is to establish a moratorium on out-of-state travel until such, well, it's a year's moratorium, unless we receive,
Better financial news.
yeah, unless somebody strikes it rich and we get a lot of money. And then we can review it, and we'll adopt the travel and expense reimbursement policy that we've been carrying around with us for a while, after we strike out all of the references to prior approval. Is that clear to everybody? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yay, new business.
Where are we? Just getting a new business?
Act on the resignation of Joshua Kimball from the position of member of the Conservation Commission effective Monday, July 16, 2018.
And I miss you, Josh.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the request of Kelly McPherson to be appointed to the position of non-voting member of the Recreation Commission for a 3-year term through June 30, 2019, in order to fill an existing vacancy.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on appointment to the Building Department. Frank?
Yes, I believe Bob is here, and Bob and I advertised for a administrative assistant to replace Karen Huxham, who was retiring in a week and a half. And we had approximately 450 resumes in response to the ad, mostly on Indeed, but we did receive some directly. We narrowed that down to, I think, ultimately 12 people. We interviewed 10. We reduced that number to 3. And Bob made his selection, which I concur with, and
So did I.
you're on,
Yeah.
Bob.
I'd just like to recognize Karen Huxham. She's been with the building department for 21 years. She's retiring, and sadly, we're going to have to say goodbye. We did interview 10 candidates. We narrowed it down to 3 that were excellent, and then after that, we invited Karen to participate in the interviews. So myself, Frank, and Karen interviewed, and it got down to 2 real quick, and then ultimately we made a final decision. And I'd have to say that we based it on somebody that would be a lot like Karen, somebody that's personable and is going to be friendly to the contractors and the residents that come into the building department. I like to make it so that it's not an angry place to come into.
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah. So we got it down to 2 that we all liked, and then we all agreed on 1, and the one that we chose was Julia Carter, who happens to be related to our treasurer collector. It had nothing to do with that. Karen was part of the decision in my mind, and I know that she wouldn't go one way or another based on relations, so I think we got the best candidate, and she's going to start on August 1st. So we're excited. I think it's going to work out well.
So I'm requesting a motion to authorize the appointment of Julia Carter to the position of Administrative Assistant Building Department.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, before you move on to the next item, may I ask that we revisit the resignation of Joshua Kimball. His letter also indicates he is resigning from the planning board.
Okay.
So I'll make that motion, we accept his resignation. Done.
Okay, second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, act on the cable access agreement, Frank?
Yes, you have before you a annotated copy of the updated cable access agreement. That is the agreement between the town of Whitman and the Whitman Hanson Cable Access Studio. Hanson revised their agreement a few months ago, and using that as a template, I have made the recommendations for our revisions, which mostly conform to their document with 2 small exceptions. And I would ask that the board authorize the renewal contract as presented.
Is there a motion?
Made that motion. For discussion.
What is
Okay. Discuss.
Frank, I didn't see, I saw in here where the board of directors has to be, what is it, 4 and 4, I believe?
Yes.
But I didn't see, I know that they went a long time without having full members of the board of directors, and I
Right.
didn't see them, I went there several times to talk to them, and I didn't see a lot of push to get new members. And I was disappointed in that, but I believe now they're almost at full staff for the board of directors. I think maybe one shot in one of the towns, but there's nothing in here giving them time limits or whatever. I didn't see, unless I overlooked it, about if in fact they do not have a full members representation from both Whitman and Hanson, that they need to get out and advertise and see if they can get members there.
I don't believe the vacancy was a result of their not seeking members. I think it was a lack of volunteers.
Well, yeah, lack
It
of
was on their
volunteers.
banners, it was talked about by the group, and frankly, I don't know what kind of hammer you would put in the agreement to make them find somebody and appoint them. It's a volunteer position, there are 4 from each town. By and large, they've done a good job serving the public access needs. It wasn't in the last agreement.
No, it wasn't.
It isn't in this agreement.
Okay.
If you feel you want to add something to it,
No, I mean, as long as they do due diligence and hunt for new members, because I know that some people put in their request to be on, and they were denied for one reason or another. I don't know, I'm not a member of the board of directors, so I don't know why they didn't get them when they needed somebody so bad. They had their reasons. Maybe it didn't fit what they were looking for as a member. Maybe they didn't know enough about cable access or TV. I do not know. That's all. I'm certainly sure they're going to be watching this, and they'll feel my concerns.
Anybody else?
I do have one question. Let's say the board is in balance, and Hanson has 4, Whitman has 1, and they make some financial decisions that would impact us because of vacancies. Do we have any recourse?
no, first of all, they cannot make any decisions that will impact us financially. All of the money that funds cable access comes directly from Comcast to them. We very specifically designed an arm's length contract because there are some pretty significant exposure if you get involved in civil rights complaints or charges, and that is the public access piece that they're responsible for. We have the only financial interest that we have with the group at this point is the building they're in. And I would suggest that we let them continue to run it as an independent corporation.
Absolutely.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I will circulate a clean copy for signature.
Act on the request of Town Clerk Don Varley to sign the warrant for the September 4th, 2018 state primary election.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Act on the request of Town Clerk Don Varley to purchase with available funds the ImageCast Precinct Tabulator and to use said machines at the May 18th, 2018 annual town election and thereafter. at all elections and to discontinue the use of the AccuVote optical scanner effective April 1st, 2019.
Motion, discussion.
Okay, is there a second?
They have a couple of questions on this. Is this just an upgrade that we wish to have, or is this a real necessity? Oh, she is, good.
Dawn is here, so- and this is money that the state actually has given us to purchase these.
Hi, good evening. Dawn Varley, Town Clerk. This has been like 3 years coming. We actually had a presentation here 3 years ago. I had LHS come with the ImageCast machine that I'm interested in, and then I went to Carver to observe the DS200, which is an ES&S product. I've gone 3 years, I've watched other town clerks, you know, it's kind of, some have picked some have picked others for different reasons. Our machines, we were actually the first town, not city, but the first town back in 1994 to use the AccuVotes, which is what we use now. Our machines, thankfully, probably because they don't leave this building, they don't get bounced in the back of a police cruiser or something like that. We've babied them. Me, Michael, and Mary are the only ones that handle them. We don't. So they've been doctored and treated real well. So we haven't had a whole lot of issues. We're starting to have issues. Just the last, and we do a test vote. As soon as we get ballots, we do just a test vote just to make sure the ballots are okay. And then 4 days prior, by law, we have to do the test deck, which is posted, and you've been invited to, and I know Dan has come to see them. So 4 days before every election, the machines have to be tested with 50, on a state election, it's 50 ballots. So if we have a primary, so this primary will be 50 of each party. That being said, the last election that we had, all 4 machines were tested, and I actually got a spare from Norwell, so I have a 5th machine, thank God. It failed. 4 days before, it had worked smoothly. There's like a red, I'm not sure what it's called, that reads the machines, the ballots when they come through. So that little, for whatever reason, it failed, the very first ballot. So then we become a hand count town. We don't want to be a hand count town. So the machines that we do use right now, LHS had said 3 years ago that in 5 years they're obsolete. I did bring and we haven't mailed them back yet, I just want to show you, just to give you an idea of the machines. These are the cards that are in those machines, just real quick. I don't think any of you have probably ever seen one that looks like this. You know, the little cards you see are probably this big, or these are the cards, and they don't make them anymore. They don't make half the components inside. So the machines are pretty much outdated. The new machines will last for 20 years, just probably like these ones have been 20 years. So, like I said, I've done a lot of research. I didn't just, and the money is there. So the federal government, how we get the money is they require us to have polls open for 10 hours, but the state wants us to be open for 3 hours. So they give us funds for those additional 3 hours for. So that's where the money has been being saved for long before me. I'm sure probably Millie is the one who set up the account for this reason, so that we're not stuck when we have no money to not be able to get new machines. So the machines, like I said, I've done a lot of research. There's a lot, if you want to come look. But the vote that I gave you is a vote that has to be taken per Mass General Law, as you can see. And I have only 5 days to let the state know that you've taken this vote. And they suggested that I don't, like I could switch, it's 90 days. I have to give them 90 days notice. We are not in compliance to do September. We could do it in November, but they recommended that you don't, because if you're not going to do it in September, you shouldn't do it in November. So I think the best bet would be, if you guys agree and are on board with me, which I hope you are, that the May would be, and if we have an override, that's even better. And they do come. We'll put these machines to good use. But they do come. They're not going to just throw us these machines, and they're not going to. They're not going to throw the machines at us and leave us on. Just.
I appreciate your due diligence on this.
Yeah.
In light of everything that we're going through now. Might I suggest next time you're talking about keeping maintenance of the machines, you don't use the word doctor.
Yeah, we do have a maintenance. We do have a maintenance contract. Every year they come. We have a maintenance agreement. That's part of the contract. And yeah, we do.
Override's not a good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree it's not, but no, we maintain our stuff, we handle them with kid gloves
I
and,
appreciate everything you do.
Yeah.
And your employees down there as well. And,
Yeah, me too.
You know, this is, I didn't realize they were as old as they were, and this is a good thing that we upgrade.
yeah. The new machines, the DS200's like 35 pounds, you need 2 people to lift. Those were like some of the things why I didn't like them. The ovals were smaller, I'm like, that's all we need, smaller ovals. It sounds crazy, but
Appreciate it.
trust me, it's a good choice if you, like I said.
She's told me.
Thank you, Dawn.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other
uh,
questions?
Any further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Sign
Thank
the
you very
forms.
much. Thank you.
Authorized lease purchase of a police vehicle.
The vehicle purchase was approved at town meeting, but in order to complete the purchase, I need a corporate resolution from the board certifying that this approval and authorization is here, and that will enable us to enter into a 3-year lease purchase agreement.
Can I make that motion?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, what do we resolve on the second vehicle? Do we ever resolve, or is that
We
done?
can't
There's
purchase
no-
the second one. So the funds that were voted are being used for payment 1 for the new vehicle, which actually will reduce the 2 subsequent payments by $1,800 each. And we'll present our needs and argument for the
Deal with it at the special?
new vehicle at our next funding opportunity.
Any
So-
questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
August meeting schedule. When Scott and Frank and I were meeting, we were running into difficulty coming up with dates for August because of times when people aren't going to be available. It looked like we may have to have our next meeting the last week of August, is that correct? Is that
Yes.
what we were looking at?
The 28th.
Yeah, the 28th of August. Just people aren't going to be here. However, we may be looking at something in the first week of August for the stakeholders meeting.
Right.
6th. And that 28th is the one we'll invite the finance committee. to
Yes.
join
Right,
us.
right. Old business, take action to renew the fortune teller's license for Stars Tarot Cards. Amanda Cole,
Paperwork's complete now.
on the premises located at 418 Bedford Street. Apparently, she's finished her,
It just needs Carlin.
what she needs to do to renew her license. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. We need to go into executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exception 1, to discuss complaints or charges brought against a public officer in connection with an open meeting law complaint made by Pyle, Rome, Ehrenberg, received July 24th, 2018. Is there a motion?
Second. Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes? Yes.
Okay, and we'll come back into open session only to adjourn.